Welcome to Two Way. Thank you, everybody, for joining this special episode focused on the Electoral College. Professor Karl Rove, fully tenured, to talk us through. We're going to run through all the battleground states and then look at the Electoral College overall a little bit and then take your questions. Plenty of time for you to raise your hand, but if you do want to be part of the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome in. You can't ask questions, but you can participate in the chat. As always, we urge you, please, this is a different kind of platform. The chat is not supposed to be a cesspool or a source of personal attacks. To my knowledge, Karl has never been attacked either by Republicans or Democrats. Let's not make this the first day that occurs. Karl, welcome.
What alternative universe have you been living in, my friend?
When I was promoting this yesterday, and I said to somebody, whoever was on, I said, you know, even if you're a Democrat and you don't like Karl Rove, you should still tune in. And I think it was your friend Hogan Gidley said, Democrats, Karl's got bigger problems with Republicans. Everyone loves Karl. I've been honored and privileged to be able to talk to Karl about the Electoral College since the 2000 campaign. And plenty of people can talk about it by looking at the polls and say, oh, so-and-so's up 2, they're probably going to win. But the trick to really understanding the Electoral College is understanding the history, the demography, the geography, and to think about states changing from cycle to cycle. States can't change all that dramatically from cycle to cycle, but they can change somewhat. And of course, over time, most of the change in since 2000, say, is unidirectional. States get more either purple or more towards purple, and then heading the other way, or move more red, more blue, whatever it is. It's rare that states switch, but it does happen occasionally. And Karl's, I wouldn't say unique gift, but special gift is he understands how to think about these, not just in the moment, but based on history. So Karl, just to ask you, how did you become interested in politics, and how did you learn how to do the Electoral College the way you do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I have no idea how I got interested in politics, because I've always been interested in history and politics. And, this may surprise you, but I was a nerd. So I had, in the 5th grade, I had a briefcase, and I wore hush puppies, and I had a pocket protector. And, when in the 5th grade, when you had your first civics class and you had to write a paper, and everybody, our 3 branches of government, or the Declaration of Independence, or, sort of an amorphous thing. I wrote mine about the theory of dialectical materialism, because I'd read this book by this guy, Marx, and he seemed like a really bad guy. So anyway, I've always been interested.
Okay. And you did the Electoral College, obviously, for President Bush in 2000, but when did you first start to study it the way you understand it now, the sort of cross-cutting of issues and demographics and election law and everything else that goes into it?
Yeah, well, I was the chairman of the mock convention at my high school. I organized a mock Democratic and a mock Republican convention to nominate presidential candidates, and I just sort of fell into it. I can't remember the aha moment where I said Electoral College, but I've always sort of studied it. You made a point that I want to play off of, though, about change. Think about it. We have 7 battleground states. Everybody pretty much agrees that this will be settled by 43 states in the District of Columbia. We sort of know how they're going to vote. And she starts out with 226. He starts out with 219. And the balance is to be found in these 7 battleground states. I think there's more change than we're willing to admit. Think about the battleground states. The other day I was talking with somebody. He said, well, what about what were the battleground states in 2000? They were Maine, New Hampshire, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Montana, Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. Now, we came within 5,500 votes of winning Oregon. And people say, well, West Virginia, that's not a battleground state. Well, it was then. Bob Dole had lost it by double digits. There was not a single statewide elected Republican. 1 of 4 congressmen were Republicans. And the last time it voted for Republicans in an open race for the presidency was in 1928, when it took nominating a New York Catholic to bring out all the Presbyterians, Methodists, and Baptists in the hills and hollows of West Virginia to vote Republican. And similarly, Oregon, I had a conversation in May of 2016 with a guy running for president as a Republican. He asked what the battleground states were, and I told Donald Trump the list. And when I got to West Virginia, he said, "Well, I'll win West Virginia. I did really well in the primaries there." And I said, "Well, here's why you will. Absolutely." And when I got to Oregon, he said, "I did really well in the primaries there. I'll win Oregon as well." And I said, "No, you won't." I said, "We had a shot in 2000 because the state was experiencing a brief moment of Republican resurgence. They had a Republican U.S. senator. They had 2 constitutional offices. 3 of 5 congressmen were Republicans. The state house was in Republican hands, and they were like 1 down in the state Senate. And we had Ralph Nader on the ballot with her following among the kooks and nuts in Multnomah County, Portland, and Eugene. But I said, since then, the state's gone far left and is no longer a battleground. Lots of people moved up from California and turned the state's politics a deeper shade of blue. But there is movement, and we're seeing it in this election. I mean, North Carolina was not a battleground state in 2000, 2004, and was won in a somewhat of a surprise by Barack Obama in 2008. But it is interesting the change in this, and the fact that as a highly polarized country, we're down to a place where 7 states are what's up for grabs.
Yeah, you're right. Over the quarter century intervening since you did 2000, lots of states have come off, a few have come on. But it doesn't happen. My point is, typically a state takes more than 1 cycle to move dramatically. In this cycle, I think this is correct, but I want your more expert backup. I don't think in our cognizance, in our professional careers, there's never been this few battleground states, and the map is unchanged. These are the 7 states we've been talking about for 2 years. Nothing's come on. When Biden was declining, there was talk of Minnesota coming on or Virginia. Nothing's come on and nothing's come off, and nothing will come off.
Right. I think that's absolutely right. And look, you're right about the seven. The next smallest number of battleground states I can find in the modern era is 1980, when there are 10. Ironically, of one of which was Texas. But yeah, we've got a very small list, and the stability in the polling. The polling when it was Biden versus Trump in these states was relatively stable with Trump on top. Now the polling since she entered the race, and particularly in the period after the Democratic convention, has been remarkably stable as well. I get up every morning and get out my nice blue paper because I like writing on it, and I go into Real Clear Politics, 538, and Silver Bulletin, but he doesn't put them up until the afternoon, so I'm working off a yesterday's sheet, and I enter in what the percentage, the average in the 7 battleground states. So I got 21 data points, each one representing dozens, in some instances, a dozen or more polls, and hence, several thousand sample. And what's interesting to me is how stable it is and how close it is. Take a look at this is yesterday. Of the 21 data points, there are 2, count them 2, Real Clear Politics in Georgia and Silver Bulletin in Arizona, where somebody leads by 2 points or better. There are 4 where the lead is between 1% and 2%, and the balance, 15, are less than 1%. And so
that's unprecedented as well.
Yeah, and the stability in it is, things are moving up and down. Like yesterday, or excuse me, today, Real Clear Politics has Trump moving down in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, up in North Carolina, down in Pennsylvania, up in Wisconsin. But I mean, it's like 0.1% or 0.2%, and the movement goes back and forth depending on who gets added in as the latest poll.
Yeah. And given the factor of ground game and polling error, there's a really meaningless separation. All right, let's go through states. Let's start with Georgia. This is an odd state. First of all, again, it used to be solidly red. Now it's somewhere between red and purple. It has 2 very liberal Democratic U.S. senators and a very conservative Republican governor. For every state here, you'll see for the last few cycles who won the state, the percentage of the vote they got, and the absolute number of votes they got. And if you're in the campaigns, you're thinking, what's it take to win? You just need to win by 1 to get all the electoral votes in these states. So, Karl, baseline question nationally, do you expect turnout to be more like 2016, more like 2020, or somewhere in between?
I think it'll be in between, but I think it's going to be more likely to be closer to 20 than to 16, simply because people feel so strongly about their respective candidates. And look, we continue to grow as a country. I mean, we've grown in the last 4 years in Texas from 18 million voters to excuse me, 16 million voters to 18 million voters. And granted, that's in migration, but I'll also look, I think the country is getting more engaged, more registered, and more likely to turn out to vote. We've been in this secular period since 1996, where, with the exception of 2012, there's been an increase in the percentage of the voting age population that turns out in presidential elections each and every cycle except 2012. I think that'll continue this time. If it had been Biden versus Trump, I think it might have declined
Yeah.
slightly. But I think the fact that they replaced Biden with Harris brought back in some young Black and Hispanic voters who would otherwise have dropped out.
And I assume you think what other people do, that the votes that go to other candidates will be closer to 16 than to 20.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be less than both,
Less than even 16.
less than even 16. Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
So winning requires getting to pretty close to 50%. And if you're right about where this will be, you need somewhere north of probably 2.5 million votes to win.
In Georgia, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Now,
Okay. So
if you look at it, this is really this is basically everybody's centered on two places. The Atlanta region, where let me see if I can pull down pull down my little pencil here. There we go. So we're looking here at this area right here. The right in the middle right here is Fulton County, which is the heart of Atlanta. But the city of Atlanta, it goes into Cobb, which is to the west. It used to be a Republican county. You can see over here, McCain carried it, Romney carried it, turns blue in 2016 and turns slightly more blue, though it doesn't appear here, in 2020. And Fulton County, which is right in the middle, gets bluer every time. And then also DeKalb County, which used to be Republican, you'll see again Republican back here in the 2008, 2012, flips in 2016, gets bluer in 2020. So for the Democrats, the issue is how much more vote can they get out of there, and can they increase the percentage of the vote slightly? And this was really tenuous last time around. A 1% decline in Black turnout in Georgia would have wiped out Joe Biden's winning margin in the state. So the Democrats have got to be focused on here. And then the Black Belt, which starts over in Mississippi, runs through Alabama, basically down here between Fort Gaines and Columbus, enters the state and goes to the north east and ends in Richmond, which is Augusta. And again, this is a question of turnout for the Democrats. They will take some of these counties here simply because of the lack of turnout among Blacks. But if they juice this up, they can return to the pattern that was more like it in 2008, where they took more of these counties. What has happened is white voters have moved into the Republican Party and Black voters simply haven't turned out. But if they can energize them, and it's going to be critical, the state has 30% of the voters are Black. So if you can start out with a significant margin there, you can with Asian, Latino, and white Democrats in the greater Atlanta area. Republicans have got to stay strong in Cherokee and Forsyth counties. These are the last two remaining Republican bastions in the Atlanta area, but they've also Trump has got to cut the margin even ever so slightly, while he runs it up here in a not very populated southeast part of the state below Savannah. And then there are 3 congressional districts up here running a sort of a big horseshoe around Atlanta where they can run up the vote.
In looking at the attempt of the Trump campaign to win more Black vote, particularly young Black men, something your campaign tried to do today, could that end up being dispositive? That if they cut into Black male vote or in Atlanta and in the rural areas, that's what tips it?
Absolutely. Again, I repeat, 1% decline in Black turnout, or taken another way, a 1% flip of the Black vote as the composition of the total vote. If it was 1% more for Donald Trump among Blacks, it would have been a narrow win, not a 0.3% loss.
Right. I'm going to ask you another question while I do. If you could go back and thicken your pencil for us, just go back over to your little
Yeah.
thing and choose the thicker pencil because some people are having trouble seeing the thin line. Um, we talk about turnout and turnout on the ground operation, and it is an asymmetrical situation. The Harris campaign has spent more on it. It's controlled internally. It's being run by at the top of the campaign, the chairwoman who's a field person by training. And then on the Trump side, you've got this coordination with the outside groups and some other additional outside groups, including some entities you've been involved in, I believe. And then the other variable in Georgia is Governor Kemp, and who has supposedly, like a good political governor, a turnout operation. So, what do you think know about turnout operations relative in Georgia?
Well, first of all, let's step back and just sort of set the model nationally, because I think there are two
Yeah.
different models that we have at play here.
Mhm.
And then we got various ways of executing it. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the Democrat model is a centralized model of that's based around headquarters and organizers. So this model was used quite effectively by Americans coming together, funded by George Soros in 2004, in an attempt to build a Democratic ground game on behalf of John Kerry. And it involved, getting headquarters. There's about 350 headquarters today in the Harris campaign. Some of them have been around for more than a year. There are 2,500 organizers. Most of them brought aboard when this was still Joe Biden. They've been at work on this thing for months and months and months. And those 2,500 organizers then, because it's a Democrat effort, they coordinate with the Democratic Party operatives, labor unions, pro-choice, climate activists, and ethnic political efforts. And they bring together volunteers for days of actions in which they focus on low propensity Democratic voters and persuadable swing voters. And this model works if you spend a lot of time building it and executing it. In 2004, this was done superbly by Americans coming together, and John Kerry got 16% more votes in 2004 than Al Gore had gotten in 2000. And they hit their targets. I mean, particularly in Ohio, they achieved what they set out to do. The other model is a model that's based around an activist, an energetic volunteer, team captain model. And this was the effort we used in 2004. And what you do is you identify enthusiastic volunteers, you train them, you nurture them, you give them a series of things to do early in the campaign so you can prove out who's actually going to do the work as opposed to just simply sign up. And over the course of the campaign, I think we ended up with like 120,000 team captains. They started out getting 25 people, low propensity Republicans and persuadable swing voters, who they're responsible for. And over the course of the campaign, if they wanted to, they could sign up for more. And some of them, took 50 people, and some of them took 75, and some of them, would take 50 and then have it off and give 25 to, a person that they brought in as the team captain for that. And we spent a year and a half building this. And it took everything. I mean, President Bush arrives on Air Force One outside of Lima, Ohio, and at the bottom of the steps of Air Force One is the mayor and the local congressman and the local state senator. But also there were 3 or 4 volunteers who'd hit their targets. And when he drives to the manufacturing facility making Abrams tanks, outside was the plant manager and somebody from corporate world and someone representing the workers and 3 or 4 other volunteers who had hit their marks. And so we did deliberately, and it worked. Now the Trump campaign began in August to do this model, and their goal is to have 40,000 of these captains by the end, with 25 people each. And they're excited about it. We got this guy, James Blair. He's been given this assignment in August, and we want to get to this in 40,000 and 25. I mean, we're going to do exciting things like we're going to have them do handwritten postcards to the people on their list. And I said, well, I've got some of those handwritten postcards from the 1952 Eisenhower campaign. So good for you, but not a new idea. But go to it. But I'm thinking 40,000 people by the end of the campaign. Even if all of them do the work and you get 25 people each, that is 1 million people you're going to touch in an electorate that's going to be 155 to 160 million. And ironically enough, on the day that I'm being briefed about this, the Democrats, the day or two later, announced that on that Saturday, they have knocked on 900,000 doors and completed 150,000 calls. That's roughly 1.1 million households. and that translates into 1,000,004, 1,000,006 voters, and they got 9 more weeks to execute, and then they got the time between the weekends, and on some places the polls to the Soul Sundays, an additional weekend day. And I'm thinking, good start, Trump campaign, but it's, you're going to be, they're going to have a lot more contact. Now, is that going to be evened out by what is being done by these outside groups? Elon Musk has got a personal management on this, so I suspect he's going to beat that organization in submission and achieve some things. But some of these other groups, I'm deeply suspicious of, and particularly I'm suspicious if they refuse to put their data at Data Trust, which is the Republican data ecosystem, so that somebody could check their homework and draw on it. If you're doing door knocking in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin for Trump, the Senate campaigns would like to know who those people are, so they don't double tap them. And anyway, it's the Democrats.
So you agree with those who say that if Harris wins, that's certainly likely to be part of the story, that even if the Trump folks meet their marks, they're not competing on the same scale.
Yeah. And if he wins, the bet that they made on, an enthusiastic volunteer is going to do more than, sort of the party apparatchiks and the people who've always done it for the unions and so forth, is proven out. But just simply the volume to me looks like it is definitely on the side of Harris, not Trump.
Yeah. All right. Two more questions about Georgia, and then we'll move to North Carolina. In a lot of the battleground states, we're talking about, both the percentage, the contribution to the vote of the cities, and how much of the black vote Trump's win, and how much of the Hispanic vote Trump can win, because that's significant in Georgia as well. We're also talking about the suburban vote, and then we're talking about how much of it votes can Trump bank from the more rural areas. That's just uniform across these states. In Georgia, what's the difference between the electorate that gives Governor Kemp an overwhelming victory and the electorate that elects Warnock and Ossoff to the Senate?
It's suburbanites. I mean, you take a look at where he did, where Kemp did in Cobb, Fulton, DeKalb, Rockdale, Clayton, Douglas. These are the counties that are the part and parcel of the Atlanta metro region that are Democrat, and Gwinnett. And he is doing better than Donald Trump does. I mean, it's college-educated suburbanites. And you're right. Think about this. He does have a great get-out-the-vote operation. He had to have one in order to beat Stacey Abrams in 2022. That was her whole, strength, was that she had built this gigantic get-out-the-vote machine. He knew that the state party was incapable of mounting an effort, and so he built his get-out-the-vote machine. Now, he kept it alive. In fact, full disclosure, he asked me to come down last, I think it was November, December, to Sea Island, where he was having a donor conference for all of the people who underwrote the Get Out the Vote effort. And they were gathering again because he said, look, I want to have a successful final 2 years as governor. And that means that I need to have a Republican legislature. And we are being, the margin is getting a little too close in the House because of the decline of Republican strength in the suburbs. So I'm going to keep this alive. And I went into that room in Sea Island, and anybody who had a big checkbook was sitting there. And if Trump carries Georgia, it's going to be one of the great ironies that he's going to owe it to Brian Kemp, whom he tried to defeat for governor, and then just recently attacked the governor's wife for not pledging her fidelity to Trump after he recruited the candidate to run against her, came to the state three times and said ugly things about her husband. I don't blame her for sitting on the sideline.
Lastly, on Georgia, in terms of the early vote, lots of discussion about what it all means and whether the greater Republican turnout is just shifting votes from election day to early. So based on your analysis of the early vote in Georgia so far, is it very encouraging for Republicans? More than that? Less than that?
I think it's somewhat encouraging, but look, we got to have this with a great deal of salt, if you will, because look, what is the baseline? It can't be 2020. That was an unusual circumstance. And it can't be 2016 because we are 8 years different and 4 elections that have been run under rules that are evolving. So this is a state that I'd be very cautious about reading too much into the early vote. And look, I'm not adverse to cannibalizing the election day. I'm not adverse to getting somebody who was probably likely to vote on election day and getting them to vote now, because you can mark them off the list. And you don't have to waste another text message or phone call or mail piece on them. And you can focus more of your resources on whoever's left. So, but look, it's going to be 2020 2026 and 2028 before we can start to make great sense out of these early vote patterns, because I think 2020 was a big reset, and 2022 is what we ought to be looking at in terms of percentages and relative strengths of the parties, even though it was a midterm.
Yep. Okay, great. North Carolina. Again, a lot of the same issues, black vote in the urban areas. This is a place, though, where the metro areas have really swelled.
Right.
And where we've got questions in the western part of the state because of the tragedy of the storm. So go to it. Just walk us through the geography and the demography here.
Okay, let's see if this works here. All right. First of all, research triangle right here, Raleigh-Durham area, and big Democrat, and becoming increasingly more Democrat. You'll notice that we're getting darker blue. Then you got Mecklenburg, which is Charlotte, right down here, southwest part of the state. What's interesting to me is that Mecklenburg black turnout runs behind. This up here in Virginia, it's called South Side, and the South Side is overwhelmingly black, and the region goes down into North Carolina. You compare turnout in these areas versus Mecklenburg, and pick black precincts in both, and you will see it's a higher turnout here than it is in the metro region. So one of the keys for the Democrats is going to be, what are they going to be doing about black turnout in Mecklenburg, and what are they going to do to juice turnout here in the research triangle of Raleigh-Durham? Republicans, we got two counties out here that are problematic, Watauga up here and Buncombe, Asheville, which are Democrat, but otherwise you can see this is pretty, west of here is pretty Republican. And down here is Henderson. That's probably the most important rural county that you've got. But you got McDowell and Avery and Macon, all of which are big Republican counties. Now, what's going on in the early vote? As of yesterday, well, first let's set what it was like in 2020. It was 43% Democrat, 29% unaffiliated, and 28% Republican. As of yesterday, the vote was Democrats 34, down 9. Unaffiliateds, boy, this is, I look like I've got severe problems, don't I? Undecided,
No,
the 32,
right.
so they're up 3. And the Republicans, they're 34, up 6. And more of them slightly than there are of Democrats. The Democrats are running second. Now, I don't know what to make of that, because I think part of that may be, I just want to get this out of here, get it done. And it may be that particularly when it comes to the black vote, that it's going to be later, and it's going to be more polls to the souls, causing people to turn in their ballots. It also may be small town versus big town. If you live in one of the small rural counties in North Carolina, and you do a mail-in ballot, it may be delivered from the post office to the local election authority the same day or the next day. But if you're in Raleigh-Durham or Charlotte and you drop it off at the post office, it may be that it takes 2 days to get to the county, the county election officials. So I'm going to watch it for the next couple of days and see if the Republican percentage tends to drop. But right now, the Republicans are running significantly ahead of where they were 4 years ago, despite the fact that every poll shows this state tight as a tick.
If you were the political director of the Trump campaign, what would your concern be?
Well, I would be concerned about the western counties. I think they are going to, the Republicans out there are historically strong, and they are going to, crawl over broken glass to vote. But and they're going to, just by coincidence, I was at Duke 2 nights ago and ended up having dinner with the Postmaster General, who is a big supporter of the program at Duke that I spoke at. And they have mobile vans they're putting up in every zip code in Western North Carolina, so that people will be able to go to the mobile van and get instructions on filling out their ballot and turn their ballot in, so that they literally will take them from the mobile van to the election authorities each day, rather than putting them into the mail stream, in order to make certain that they are delivered in a timely fashion. So, and this is done with the approval of the governor and the state board of elections, which oversees the elections. And so if I were inside the Trump campaign, I'd be worried about trying to offset the weakness that I'm going to have in the Research Triangle and in Charlotte. I mean,
Mm.
yes, you want to maximize your turnout, as you can see down here in the southeastern part of the state, Wilmington and so forth. It's gotten redder and redder in those areas of the state. Used to, in fact, you have some historically blue counties over here in 2008 that by now are turning red, and the red counties turning deeper red. Um, so I'd be worried about making certain that I got those people out. I think the mountain people are going to be, you're going to miss some people because they moved to Atlanta until their house gets rebuilt. But I think people out there are going to turn out.
My theory is the turnout could be higher because they're going to get such TLC from the government and from the two campaigns. Do you think
I
that's
think that's right.
possible?
I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right.
I'm assuming, but I shouldn't assume. Do you make Trump the favorite in these two southern states?
I do, though. Though to me, the one that is most at risk is for him is Georgia, because look, there is one out of every three voters could be black, and unless he is able to punch through with young black men, and remember, young black men in Philadelphia may be different than young black men in Atlanta. Young black men in Atlanta, where there is a thriving entrepreneurial culture, where the economy is much better, where we're not talking about we're talking about a dynamic inner city, may have a different kind of a young black male voter than somebody in Philadelphia.
Is Harris a stronger North Carolina candidate than Biden would have been
Yes. Yeah.
because of younger voters?
Yeah. Younger voters. I mean,
Yeah.
and look, the state is continuing to, you look at where the population growth is. There are retirees in the West, but there are a lot more people moving to the Research Triangle and to Charlotte. Research Triangle, they're coming down from the Northeast. The Charlotte area, they're coming from all over. But both of those are big financial centers and research centers, and so you're getting college-educated voters. And we have two huge divides this time around. We will have the biggest gender gap, both for men and women, that we've probably seen in our lifetime, certainly among women. And I think we're going to see a huge education gap as well that's going to grow over where it was in 2020.
There are no abortion ballot measures in either Georgia and North Carolina, but is Harris's pro-choice position an advantage for her in these two states?
I think it is, but I think it is in part because Trump has not been able to articulate a message that is fulfilling for for voters who are up for grabs. I mean, it's fine for the Republican base that says, okay, well, I may be more pro-life than you're now sounding, but you are my candidate, you are my leader. But I think the battle here is particularly for younger, female, independent, decline to state, nonpartisan, independence, whatever label you use in that state. Um, and I think those are people who are going to be grabbed more by her message. I used to think the abortion issue was going to play an important role, but a lesser role than it's playing today. And I have to say, I think one of the things that works for the Democrats is their advertising on this that's supported by what she goes out and says. The
Hmm.
ads don't really feature her. The most powerful ad is this ad featuring the young woman who was sexually assaulted by her father and is made pregnant at the age of 12, stepfather, I guess. And that's a powerful ad. And the language of the vice president is to be supportive of that kind of message. We need to protect the right of a woman, and we need to avoid situations like this. And as a result, I think the ads, have a bigger impact. Presidential campaigns are different from any other campaign. I think when it comes to advertising, the ads don't matter as much if the candidate's not talking about the ad. If the candidate is talking about the ad in terms that reinforce the ad becomes more important in a presidential race. If they're not talking about them, then it sort of like becomes background noise.
And these are two states that in 2020 you didn't have to worry about at all. I mean, in 2000 rather, you didn't have to
No,
worry about it at all.
no.
Okay, let's go to Pennsylvania. Start by talking about what's the difference between the Philly suburbs and the Pittsburgh suburbs.
Well, one is college educated. The southeastern suburbs have a significantly larger number of college educated voters. Second of all, they do have the remnants in the southeast of old Republican machines. These used to be the big suburban strength that the Republicans depended on to win the state, and there's still a little bit of that left at the local level. But as you can see, we got a really weird thing going on here. If you take a look down here, these counties in the southeast are getting bluer. Romney was able to recover some strength in 2012, but by 2016 they turned against Trump, and they turned even more in 2020. Ironically enough, the city of Philadelphia went the other way. Working class whites in the city of Philadelphia, and maybe this time around, younger black men will move the city slightly less Democrat and slightly more towards Trump. But you know, those college educated voters in the Southeast are just not the same as the sort of more blue collar suburbanites, working class, blue collar, culturally conservative, significantly more Catholic voters in the far West.
What percentage of the state vote comes from Philadelphia and the suburbs?
Oh my God, I want to say, I mean, it's above, I think 40% or more.
Yeah. So
A majority,
obviously,
majority
yeah,
of it's clear majority of the vote in the state is cast in basically the Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, City of Philadelphia, and Allegheny are like 60% of the vote in the state.
yeah. You made a big play for the Philly suburbs in 2000,
Yeah.
and the issues for you were things like education, uh, Bill Clinton's record of personal conduct, and the economy. How do you appraise Trump's the third time around his appeal in those suburbs?
Well, I think this is where the test is going to be, because I think there are going to be people there that say, you know what, I think the economy was better when he was in office, and the Democratic Party has gotten far too woke, and the city of Philadelphia has suffered as a result of Democratic rule, but I don't like him, and um, I'm willing to vote for Congressman Fitzpatrick, but I'm not willing to vote for Donald Trump unless I'm being given a better reason. And the question is he giving him a better reason this time around?
If they figure out a way to turn the defections from black men, young black men, around in Philadelphia, and if she uses abortion and Trump fatigue in the suburbs, I won't say that's it, but that's the building blocks of her beyond at least the doorstep of a victory, right?
Well, yes, but she's got a couple other things. This is a more complicated puzzle. Let's go up here. Scranton Wilkes-Barre. He does Biden does better there than Hillary Clinton did because he was the hometown boy. And the question is Harris going to be able to maintain that home, that hometown flavor? We voted for the Biden Harris team because old Joe came from Scranton. Long, they're these two, they're the eastern counties, far eastern counties, which are long distant commutes from New York, are becoming slightly more Republican. Reading down here is now a majority Latino community. Think about that. Pennsylvania, in the middle of Pennsylvania, there's a significant town that is that's majority Hispanic. And then, the question is, can you juice the turnout out in Allegheny for the Democrats? And can you hold on to Erie, which is, as you can see, flip back and forth. It was historically Democrat. Trump carried it in 2016, flipped back to Biden in 2020. And if Trump is going to carry it, he's got to flip that county again. And if Allegheny County turns out more heavily Democrat, then he's got to find more votes out here in the Southwest, in these once Democrat, now increasingly Republican counties. So, as Carville said once, it's Philadelphia on the east, Pittsburgh on the west, and Alabama in between. But there's actually more Alabama elsewhere in the state besides in between, and one of the most important for Trump is going to be out here.
A couple more about Pennsylvania. You have since 2000, really, the Democratic Party project is how can they have more appeal in rural areas? And they've really not done particularly well by most measures, either thematically or on issues, and certainly in the electoral results. So, but you saw John Kerry try this. You saw Barack Obama do better. You saw the Clinton campaign try. How would you appraise her ability to not be shellacked in the rural parts of the state, which, as you said, is not just between, but pretty much all over, except for a
Yeah.
few urban areas?
Well, I think it's a mistake for her to, sort of the northern tier here, for example. Don't waste your time. You're not going to, you're not going to get anything. But around Harrisburg, there are once rural counties that are now becoming ex-urban, where people are, where companies are saying the cost of facilities and people is too difficult in Philadelphia. So we're going to open up something, east of Harrisburg, and there's a good workforce there, and we'll take some of our employees with us. And people will say, I get a better house and a cheaper house and a better neighborhood and better schools. And that's where, if I were her, I'd be focused my efforts is she's got to hold on. She's got to hold on to the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area. She's got to fight him tooth and nail in the suburbs, but she's got to also look at the ex-urban areas that were once rural that are becoming, larger and more populous, and not worry so much about, out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. The
This,
capacity.
incidentally, is
Yeah,
Penn State. This
yeah,
is Penn State right here.
yeah, right in the middle.
Yep.
The capacity of public polling to measure what's happening. It's been very strange. I've been told consistently by people with access to high quality private polls that Trump has been ahead in Pennsylvania pretty consistently, not by a lot, but pretty consistently. Public polls don't uniformly match that. Why would that be?
Darned if I know. That's why I don't look at any individual poll that much. I'm looking at the averages because I think it's gotten so difficult to poll. We had in 2016 underpolling of Trump voters because there were shy Trump voters. I don't think there are shy Trump voters anymore. We've now got Trump voters with flags and banners and hats and shirts. I do think there is a non-response bias in polls, as pollsters talk about it, which is people basically who don't trust anybody who calls them anonymously and says, "I want your opinion." And I think that tends to be more Republicans than Democrats. But look, the pollsters got it wrong in 2016, saying Hillary was in better shape. They got it wrong in 2020, saying Biden was in better shape. They got it wrong in 2022, saying it was going to be a Republican wave. My gut tells me that they've got that problem sort of solved by asking the recall question, so they can adjust their samples to reflect opinions from people in conformity with how that electorate broke in 2020. But is there a difference between somebody who actually voted for Trump and somebody who today recalls voting for Trump? Is there anything in their opinions that causes it to be skewed one way or the other?
Who do you make the favorite here?
Uh, Again, you'd have to. My instinct is wherever it's close, Trump should have the advantage because 2/3 of the American people, and I bet 2/3 of the people in Pennsylvania, think we're going in the wrong direction. And they thought they're increasingly thinking the economy was better under his watch. And they think that he is better able to handle the economy, inflation, and the border. But on the other hand, he has strong antagonism among parts of the electorate who are likely to turn out mainly women and college educated voters. So again, this should not be a contest. I mean, there's been no president reelected with numbers as bad as Joe Biden had, and as bad as are applied today to the Biden Harris administration. And yet the thing is that in the national polls is a dead even race. And in Pennsylvania, I mean, take a look at the Real Clear Politics, et cetera, what they're at. I mean, Silver Bulletin has it a tie. It is 0.9% in Real Clear Politics. Excuse me, 0.2% Real Clear Politics. I'm sorry, 538, and it's 0.6% in Real Clear Politics. So it's tight.
Lastly, Governor Shapiro, leave aside the question of whether he might have been on the ticket. If you were the Harris campaign, what would you be relying on him to do?
Turn out the vote. I mean, he is the governor. The governors have a special ability to mobilize everybody because they're going to be in office, win or lose, for, in his case, probably 6 more years. And so people want to be responsive to their governor and get it done. And particularly when you have as many, Pennsylvania is tribal. And so you have fights between the Pittsburgh Democrats and the Philadelphia Democrats, between the factions of the party, between the state party and the local parties, particularly in the big cities where they have, something akin to a modern political machine, albeit, not as effective as the old political machines. But yeah, it's he can play a big role.
All right, let's go to Michigan. This is in theory, the bluest of the three blue wall states, the Great Lakes states, but there's special problems there. Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, labor has been an issue for her, and young black men and Hispanic men. So, uh, let's start in reverse order here. Do you think of this as her weakest of the three Great Lakes states, or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Um,
Okay.
Now, they're not necessarily borne out by the data. Real Clear Politics has him up by 0.2% in their average. 538 has her up by 0.7%. And yesterday, Silver Bulletin, which will come out with its number later today, had her up by 0.8%. So they had a wider margin in the state for her than Wisconsin, for example, and certainly more than Pennsylvania. But my instinct is this is just going to be tougher because I'm not certain the effect of the 200,000 Arab Americans in Dearborn and Oakland County is fully revealed.
Familiar story again. She needs votes from the cities and the suburbs. He's got to run it up in the metro areas and the rural areas and a battle over the suburbs and exurbs. And then again, the question of black vote. But as I said, the special cases here involving Arab, Muslim, and
Yeah.
labor. So how is it that this state went from 2000, where it was very competitive for then Governor Bush, to now becoming a pretty blue state? What's happened?
Well, the Republican Party sort of, blew itself up. I mean, nominated candidates who were election deniers and saw the ticket go down in flames, saw the party structure, which used to be one of the more steady and effective ones in the country, blow itself up, literally go to the edge of bankruptcy. And then you also have a changing electorate. Oh, you have the old Dutch population here out in western Michigan, Kent County, right here, home of Grand Rapids. Take a look at it. Used to be red, was red in 2008 with Obama, turned blue against Mitt Romney in 2012, remained there for Trump, came back in 2020 with Biden. But this used to be, the powerhouse of Western Michigan. And so the battle over Kent County is going to be important this time around. Increasingly more college educated. The Republican Party is increasingly at war with itself, and it is also becoming more diverse. So you toss that, and then all the problems with Macomb, red, Oakland, blue, Wayne, obviously the city of Detroit, deeply blue, Ann Arbor, blue. You've got to. Trump has got to be able to amp up the numbers in Macomb, which has got a lot of auto workers, and find a way to improve his numbers in both Wayne with particularly black men, and in Oakland with hopefully I think they can get a chunk of the Arab American vote, and by straddling also get a significant vote among Jewish voters in that area as well.
How could it be that the state party could be such a shambles, and yet doesn't make still Trump is still competitive in the state? Is it because state parties don't matter as much anymore?
Well, they matter when it comes to the get out the vote operation. They don't matter. They don't matter in terms of making certain that you're a viable candidate. You get to do that on your own, but they play an important role in getting out the vote because they're, first of all, they should have a ready pool of volunteers who've done it before, who are available to the campaign. They have ability to coordinate with all the county parties, and they're a way to they get a cheaper postage rate, for example, which saves you money, and they hopefully have people who have been doing this so they can call upon them to do it again, and that gives you a head start on deploying your people. But the state party just utterly collapsed in this state, and they've got a good state chairman now, former congressman, former ambassador, but he got into office in May or June, and this is something that needed to be started last year.
If you were the Harris campaign, besides young black men, what would your concerns be about Michigan?
Jewish voters and Arab American voters, and I'd really be worried about blue collar working class union members in the auto industry and the Teamsters and the UAW and the other trade unions. Because, look, the Teamsters are not unique. You remember the poll that showed that basically among the Teamsters, a majority of them were supporting Donald Trump. And so if I were her, I'd be worried about that. You can't win the election alone simply by having the support of the teachers union and the Service Workers International.
Could a more skillful candidate have kept down the peril she faces electorally with Arab American, Muslim Americans, and Jewish American voters, or is this an impossible political situation?
I think it's an impossible political thing. Pick a side, figure out who you are and what you stand for, and turn it into a Sister Souljah moment, one way or the other. I thought one of her more effective moments early on was being interrupted by a pro-Palestinian protester at one of her rallies, and her respectfully shutting them down.
Well, do you think it requires picking a side, or trying to synthesize and make everybody happy, or that's not possible?
I don't think it's possible. You may be able to synthesize it and cause people to say, well, she's got a reasonable position and she's not lined up explicitly with one side or the other. But what I think more than anything else is strength. This is one of the, she leads on the question of the physical strength and mental acuity. Physical and mental stamina is the one of the question that was asked better than he does. He used to lead on that issue versus Biden, but he leads on the question of who's is he or she a strong leader? More people say yes about him than they say about her.
Even as the states become more blue overall, you can see in the north, the finger part of the mitten is turned red. How has that happened?
Well, again, this is Saginaw, which is right here, and Flint. I just think what's happened there is that people have said, look, we're, the elites on both coasts don't, respect us, and we're ignored. And we are, we may be small town and, but we are metropolitan regions that have a sense of self, and our industries are declining and people are not paying attention to us. And, our values are not respected. And, one party seems to stand up for us and the other party doesn't.
Where will you be watching here on election night most critically?
I'm going to be watching turnout in Wayne County, and I'm going to be watching turnout in Oakland. Wayne County is going to be representative of black turnout, and Oakland County is going to tell us what's happening with Dearborn.
And who do you make the favorite in Michigan?
I would tend to think she is a modest favorite. It's one of the weaker states in the Real Clear Politics average, and the RCP average includes, every poll on the right and left that benefits their party, and so it's the least reliable of the three, in my opinion. It used to be one of my favorites, but I just think they're not discriminating on how they just throw it all into the stew, and even there, like yesterday, it was Donald Trump by 0.2%. And
One of the Go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's most confused me is how Mike Rogers has fared in polling in this Senate race. It's an open seat held by Democrat, but I would think he'd have done much better. And it seemed to me that said something about the politics of the state. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, being a swing state, you got to run a strong campaign and convince him to be for you. Now he's coming on here a little bit at the end, but he has been outspent by Slotkin almost from the beginning, and she's run a very effective campaign. And money doesn't determine the outcome of every race, but money can have a big impact, and I think it has been having a big impact in the Senate contest. We'll see how close it comes. It's closing here at the end. Let's see how close it is.
Okay, let's do Wisconsin, please. Okay, this is in some ways the bluest of the three, historically, but Michigan seems to have passed it. Again, a lot of the same issues: rural areas, ex-urban, a black vote, union. What keeps this from being a Harris state? Where's Trump overperforming the history of Democrats? Because this has been, Dukakis won it, and it's been almost entirely a blue state.
Well, we also, first of all, we have in Milwaukee the same thing that we see in Philadelphia, in that he's doing slightly better among white working class ethnic neighborhoods. Um, but look, this is going to be, to me, this is one of the more interesting puzzles because the Republicans do have an issue. You take the WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington, the three sort of collar counties around Milwaukee. There's 60,000 people that in 2020 voted for the Republican for state house, state senate, or Congress, but didn't vote for Donald Trump in those three counties. And in the Bow counties, Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago up here leading into the Green Bay. And, that's where Trump has got to worry about because these are people who didn't vote for him last time around. The mayor of Waukesha, Wisconsin, yesterday endorsed Harris. I mean,
Yeah.
the town fathers of Waukesha, dating back to the 1854 founding of the Republican Party, are rolling over in their graves that happened. But that this is a state where, yes, he's doing much better. The Iron Range up here, look at it. Look at the Iron Range. Look how Republican it is today. Look at where it was in 2008 with Obama. And that was not just Obama. That was historically how it was. And then it began trending in Obama 2012, Trump 2016. Same down here in the Southwest. There's a little town over here called Cuba that straddles the county line, and it's the self-proclaimed city of presidents. It's got one street, and hanging off of every light pole is one of the ugliest metal cutouts of a president of the United States. I mean, George Washington really had problems with his teeth, and Abraham Lincoln, he had sort of a head like at least according to the town fathers of Cuba, he had a very elongated head. I mean, it was like very weird. But that was Democrat. We went up and down the river, the Mississippi River road right here in 2000 and 2004, and it became less Republican by 2012, flips in 2016, and is now becoming he had some dilution here in areas in some of the counties, but this is where Trump needs to help run up the numbers. What's going to be very interesting though is over here. These people watch Minneapolis TV. This may be one place where they have a familiarity with Walz, and I wonder if it's going to have a positive or a negative effect on far western Wisconsin. Hudson, for example, they watch Minneapolis. They follow the Vikings, they follow the Twins, and they watch Minneapolis to get their news.
Has he campaigned up there, do you know?
Well, he's been up there once, I think. But the question is how much is 6 years of seeing the guy on television cause him to be enthusiastic or not? And then for the Democrats, they get more votes out of Dane County, Madison than they get out of Milwaukee. And so the question for them is, can they run that up? Is the Middle East issue going to hurt them among students at UWM?
The Senate race has gotten very tight, and a lot of concern there on the part of the DSCC and of the Baldwin folks. Is that an impact on the presidential, or is that a result of the presidential? How do you see that?
I think it both is and it isn't. I mean, it is that if Trump were running a weak campaign in the state, that would hurt Hovde. But I think part of it is Hovde is going to Hovde right from the beginning has understood about these 60,000 people. And so he's been running a campaign to try and make certain that they vote for him. And then look, there's a brief period of time in Wisconsin called summer. It's a short period of time, but during that period of time, every one of these rural counties has a fish fry or a parade or a celebration or a festival. And Hovde loves going to these things, and Baldwin doesn't. She hasn't done it for years, and he is like tall, attractive, has campaign workers and family members with him, running from side to side of the street, shaking hands, at the Mequon fish fry, and anyway, he loves doing it. And I think this has given him an advantage in the outstate that is serving him well in the Senate race, because again, we like to see our candidates as sort of happy warriors, and he's definitely a happy warrior.
Always a debate about whether it matters where the convention is and whether that has a lingering impact for the general election. I was struck with my experience in Milwaukee. Again, totally anecdotal, but I was there for 5 days. Lots of young black men, lots of white ethnics in Milwaukee, really pro-Trump, not just voting for Trump, but very pro-Trump. Is
Yeah.
that potentially, whether you attribute to the convention or not, my spidey sense is he's going to have overperformance in Milwaukee that could be decisive.
Yeah. Think about it. Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee. I think that he's got a chance to um, outperform among young black men who have aspirations for a better future for themselves and their families.
And
And
also white ethnics,
and
right?
also white ethnics who say, he cares about my values. I want the political system shaken up, and he's willing to do it.
Yeah. And who do you make the favorite here?
Again, dead even. I mean, I just, if I had to say, that they have this is the best Democratic state party in the country.
Yeah. Chairman
Everybody,
is incredible.
yeah. Incidentally, this is a pattern. Remember this. Look at this: 1,630,000 last time around, 1,670,000 in 2008.
Yep. Crazy. All right. Arizona, please. So this is a weird state. Obviously, it's got one mega county
Yep.
and lower
It's
black
all about
population.
Maricopa. It's
Yeah,
all about
one
Maricopa.
one lower black population, but obviously a big Hispanic population. And until Biden won it, it had been a very red state. So what did Biden do in 2020 that was different than previous Democratic attempts?
Well, I think it was not just what Biden did, but I think it's two things. I think it's the McCain factor and the Mormon factor. There was evidence in 2016 that Trump was not running as well in the eastern part of Maricopa County, which has a big concentration of Latter-day Saints, who just sort of he was not their kind of candidate. Think about it: McCain 53, nearly 54, Romney 54, Trump 48, so six points less. So about 12% fewer votes, and a big chunk of those are in places like Tempe and Mesa, where there are big LDS congregations, um, and then you got the Scottsdale problem, which is really apparent here. Take college educated, um, particularly women, who suddenly say, I've had enough of this, and so Trump drops below his 2016 performance, and part of it, and a big significant increase in vote. Look at that, from 1.2 to 1 point nearly 7, and I think those are deadly to him. And Maricopa is 60% of the vote.
When
And
you were often credited with putting same-sex marriage ballot measures on battleground states in 2004 as playing a big role in the victory. Is that historically accurate or not?
no, no. In fact, do you think we really wanted to fight the 2004 election out over the issue of gay marriage? No. These were sort of generated by a groundswell of support around the country, led by evangelical leaders. And no, but this was not. And here's
Okay.
the other
So
thing:
yeah,
it
go
did
ahead.
not lead to an increase in turnout. You take the look of the states that have gay marriage ballot measures on the ballot, and the increase in turnout from 2000 to 2004 in those states mirrors the increase from the states without such referendums on the ballot.
I asked because, first of all, I always like to clean up history, but I asked because we heard for months that if Arizona put the pro-choice ballot measure on the ballot, it would make a huge difference in the campaign. And now you hear nothing about it. So what
Right.
explains that?
Well, I think it had as effect just it being the issue. It's why the state is close. It again, this is a state that ought to be the whole election ought to be easier for Trump. Again, I repeat, 2/3 of the American people think the country's going in the wrong direction. He has a significant lead on the three biggest issues. This is a border state. You got the mayor of Yuma, Arizona, is a pal of mine. I mean, you talk to him about what it's doing to his community. He's got a hospital there, a community of about 90,000 people, and every month that hospital has been putting out $1 million in uncompensated care. The Border Patrol comes by and says, "Here's somebody who's sick. It's up to you to heal them." And that's being borne by the citizens of his community. He was being overrun by people being dropped off by the Border Patrol, and he didn't have the food kitchens or the hotel rooms or whatever. And he found out a bunch of those people um, had plane tickets out of Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix. So he called up Ducey, the governor and said, "Can you give me some money to help run a shuttle service from Yuma to the airport?" So, you got released by the Border Patrol and, sign in here if you got a reservation out of Sky Harbor. Oh, I see you got a flight out of Sky Harbor on Thursday to Chicago. Let's see if we can get you on an earlier flight. Oh, yes, we can get you out this afternoon. Here's a little chit. Come back at 11 o'clock and we'll put you on the shuttle to Sky Harbor Airport. You need to make a phone call to anybody in Chicago? Here's a free phone. Why don't you dial them up and tell them you'll be arriving tonight? And that, this is why this state ought to be, they're feeling it. They are feeling it dramatically, as well as the economic concerns. And yet it's tight as a tick. I think he
What?
takes it, but
Yeah.
I think he
Why?
takes,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Why has the area west of Phoenix become more blue?
Well, actually, the part of Phoenix that is becoming the western part of central and western part of Maricopa has pockets that have become much more red, like Peoria, where they are basically sort of more blue collar, middle class, aspirational neighborhoods than
Hmm.
affluent neighborhoods like Scottsdale.
And in this case, we've got now we had a Republican governor, we've got a Democratic governor now. She doesn't seem to be quite as political as some of the Eastern governors.
No, nor as
It,
effective.
yeah. So we've got Mark Kelly out campaigning for Kamala Harris. Is any of that matter? And again, talk about the McCain factor.
Well,
Uh,
Ruben Gallego is running for the Senate and doing a good job, and Carrie Lake is struggling. She can't get over having lost the governor's race. I mean, look, think about it. Who led the Republican ticket in 2022? It was the Republican candidate for state treasurer, a like two-term Asian American woman named Yee, and she leads the Republican ticket and gets elected, running ahead of the rest of the ticket. And yet she is opposed by the Trump forces. Charlie Kirk refused to, with Turning Point, refused to help her, saying she was not a true Republican, not MAGA enough. And yet she led the ticket. So there is a divide out there. John McCain had a lot of followers. It might not have been the majority in the party, but they are loyal to his memory, and they're looking at Trump and saying he was the one who mocked our leader, and his principal spokesman in the state told us to get the hell out. And so I'm not certain a lot of them will vote for Harris, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them left their ballot blank.
Turning Point is based in Arizona. They have no expertise prior to now in doing get out the vote. Do you understand why they've been given such a large role in Arizona and other states to do this?
Well, because they've got a good relationship with Don Jr. and with the former president, and they can raise money, and so they're underwriting some of his rallies, and because they said we can do it. Now they said that they were going to do Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan. They acknowledged they have withdrawn from Michigan. They've acknowledged to donors that they've made a mistake by promising to be active in those two other states. And my sense is, from talking to people in Wisconsin, they're invisible in Wisconsin. So their effort is largely, or maybe even solely, uh, restricted to Arizona.
All right, you've already said you think Trump will take this. Let's do last one. Nevada. Did I pronounce it correctly? It's
Nevada,
Nevada. Yeah,
Nevada.
you're from Nevada.
Well,
Um,
partly
yeah, partly. You're partly from Nevada.
Colorado,
So
Nevada, and Utah.
so just a kind of a anthropological political question. What I've been told all cycle is, of course, the Democrats are going to win because the ghost of the Harry Reid machine is still chugging along. What do you think of that proposition? Is there such a thing as a political machine that Harry Reid built that's still in place, or does that
Yeah,
just mean labor unions?
no, there was a machine, and Harry ran it, and Harry's dead, and the echoes remain, but it's not as powerful as it once was. Witness the fact that Harry would have moved heaven and earth to win the governor's race in 2022, and instead the Republican sheriff of Clark County, Joe Lombardo, won. So no, it's an interesting state, and it's in transit. Okay, you have 71% of the voters live in this county, Clark, Las Vegas. And then about another uh, 17% live in Washoe County, but they live at the bottom of Washoe County in Reno and Sparks. And this is mostly desert up here. And then the balance of the state, when I lived there, we used to call these the cow counties. John Ralston, who's sort of the preeminent journalist in the state, now sort of insists that we call them the rurals. But these are overwhelmingly Republican. Elko County up here is like voted for Trump with like 76% of the vote. And there are three counties that were even higher. The fastest growing county in the state is right over here, Lyon County, just to the east of Reno and Sparks. There's some stuff going on here. The old saw used to be that the Republicans had to keep the registration gap to less than 100,000. I think the gap in 2004 was like 70,000, and we won the state. The gap today is 19,000. That is to say, there are only 19,000 more Democrats than the Republicans. Now, it's not as good as that because what has happened is the percentage of the voters who are independent. In that state, you call them nonpartisans. The nonpartisans are now 34% of the vote. The Democrats are 30. The Republicans are 29. The remainder is split between about 15,000 libertarians and 88,000 registered members of the American Independent Party, the old George Wallace Party that still exists in the state. They're probably all Trump voters. But this is going to be interesting to watch. Heretofore, in every other election that I'm familiar with in the modern era, the early vote has been dominated right from the get-go by the Democrats, and not so this time around. In fact, the Republicans still today, though there are 30,000 Democrat mail-in ballots from Clark County yesterday, the Republicans still have received more mail-in ballots and early vote than the Democrats have at this point. Their margin, they were up by about 6,000 a couple of days ago. I think they're down now to a couple of thousand. I suspect the Democrats will eclipse them here in the next couple of days. But the fact that the Republicans have been ahead for a number of days is just simply astonishing.
I've been asking the question, is this happening not just in Arizona, but in the other places where Democrats are underperforming what been their norm? Is this happening organically, or is this a secret operation by the Trump campaign that bespeaks to their capacities for election day?
It could be both. I think part of it is this, and this is a nutty theory, but think about it. You're a voter who's going to vote by mail in Las Vegas. So you get your ballot, you fill your ballot out, you leave it for the carrier to pick it up. It goes to the sub post office. It gets sent to the sorting center for the area. It goes through that process, gets put out for, sent to the sub post office that has the county courthouse or county election facility in it, and gets delivered. And that may take 2 or 3 days. Yep. You're in Elko. You put in your ballot at the Elko post office. They're sorting it, and they say, this goes down the street, and it may be delivered the next day. So part of this may simply be that the cow counties, they don't mail it to Carson City, the state capital. They mail it to the county seat. And in most instances, the county seat is the largest town in the county: Elko, Battle Mountain, Winnemucca, Fernley, Yerington. These are the biggest towns in the county. And so it may be that the ballot simply came in faster from the rurals because the rurals had a lot less complicated path through the mail system to get to the recipient.
It's been the case for several weeks that my sources in both parties have said Arizona is Trump's best state of the 7, and this is her best state of the 7. Do you agree with that?
Nope, I don't.
What's her best state of the 7?
I would tend to think maybe Michigan, but I don't know. Look, these are also here. Let's look at the averages. Here's the Nevada averages. Real Clear Politics, him up by 0.09, her up in 538 by 0.03, her up in Silver Bulletin by 0.4. By comparison, she's up in Michigan by 0.6 in 538 and 0.8 in Silver Bulletin. And in Wisconsin, she's up 0.5 in 538 and 0.6 in Silver Bulletin.
How did President Bush campaign in Clark County? Did he go to union events? How do you campaign in that county?
Well, you've got a Henderson, which is sort of middle class and nice neighborhoods. people who work, a lot of professionals, to the degree that there's a manufacturing sector in the state, that the people who work in those facilities and run those facilities live in Henderson. North Las Vegas is overwhelmingly Hispanic. East Las Vegas is Black. Summerlin, which is to the west, is wealthy, and you have to basically treat them as 3 or 4 different communities and make certain that you appear at something that's convenient for everybody to go there. And then you have to make stops in the outstate. In 2004, we went to Elko, dropped in on a smaller version of Air Force One into Elko, and I think everybody in Northeast Nevada came to it because they'd never seen a president who'd come to Elko. So in Reno, you have to go to Reno and Sparks. The Republicans, the county south of there, Story and Lyons to the east. You got to make certain you have a strong effort there with a lot of surrogates. But nearly 2 out of every 3 voters is in one county, and that's where you go each and every time for a Latino event. With workers in the casinos. Small business people, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which is very active in the state, has a very charismatic leader who's likely to play a political role in the future. But yeah, and it's heavily urbanized. You look at that state and say, geez, big Western state, sagebrush rebellion, et cetera, but it is highly, highly urbanized with everybody shoveled to Clark County and a very small part of Washoe.
Right. So I believe this is correct. This is the only one of the 7 Trump's never won, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So besides the economy, what would be different this time for him?
Well, remember, the economy matters here because they got hit by COVID and they got hit by the slowdown that came afterwards. That came with the COVID, and while they recovered, it did not leap back up like a lot of the other parts of the economy did, because this is dependent upon people getting on an airplane and flying to Las Vegas and enjoying themselves. And it took us a while to get there. So people hung on for as long as they could, but a lot of people left and said, I can't make a living here because I've been out of work for 6 or 9 months. I'm going back to fill in the blank, Salinas or Bakersfield or Los Angeles or San Francisco.
This state, again, it's weird. The question of where the Union and Hispanic allegiances will go. It's obviously went from when you were working President Bush, it was a red state. It's become a blue state. They've won 4 in a row. Is it trending blue, continuing to trend blue, or is it now stasis or maybe moving back red?
I think it's moving back red. It wasn't really a red state. It was one of the more problematic states that we had, along with Colorado and New Mexico.
What before Obama, who was the last Democrat to win it?
I think Clinton won it. Well,
Clinton did. Clinton did. You're right.
Yeah, and I know obviously Johnson won it, but
yeah,
Reagan won it twice.
But Reagan won it twice. 41 won it. You won it twice.
Right.
Yeah. And is the Union vote there? Do you think the sense from the Trump people is that Trump's going to do better with the Union vote this time than he did the 2 previous times?
Well, they think that because they're talking about no tax on tips.
Yeah.
But the union there is different. Remember, it's the culinary union. This is not, these are people who are service employees. It's more akin to the Service Employees International Union than it is to the Teamsters or the United Auto Workers. The culinary union is one of the best run unions in the country, and they stay close to their people. So I don't see a big union breakthrough there. It may be that they say, look, he comes from he's got a big facility here, got a big hotel here. He comes from the industry. He understands us better. But I think it's being driven by general concerns about the economy and inflation. Who's going to make our country more prosperous? Because when we're a prosperous country, people come here, spend their money, enjoy themselves, and we get employed.
No tax on tips. Obviously, it must have been politically smart because she swiped it. And it seems to me the kind of thing that you like, which is it's tangible for people. They feel it they at least sense they can feel it in their pocketbook, even though it doesn't affect very many people. And even the people who make tips, it's not necessarily going to apply to them, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me how many people who get tips today report all their tipped income.
yeah, but nonetheless, it seems to have struck a chord.
Maybe we'll see. And I think that if it was,
I mean, I say that only because she swiped it.
well, no, that was smart on her part. Don't give him anything,
Yeah,
But on the other hand, I've had more than one person say to me, "Why is a tipped employee better than me, hourly wage?"
yeah, yeah. That's true.
I think
All
I
right.
think I think
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
last thing that may have an impact on this. Remember,
Yeah,
Washoe County is changing because what's happening is a lot of tech companies are opening up
yeah,
facilities there because they can get, their employees can get cheaper housing and it's close enough that they can supervise it from Silicon Valley. So what used to be a red county, the only blue county in the state used to be Clark County, and it is only starting in 2008 the Democrats begin winning Washoe.
yeah. And obviously those are higher educated, higher income
Right.
folks that are more likely to vote for her.
Right.
All right. Let's go to the electoral college map and just do this quick. If you want to get in conversation here, ask a question to Karl, make a point, please raise your hand. We'll get you in just a moment. So I've toggled everything. Nebraska 1, I've toggled blue. Very surprising to me that that doesn't seem competitive. I understand it's been a blue county or blue congressional district, but are you surprised the Trump folks haven't spent more there and tried to turn it?
Yeah, I am. I was out there a couple weeks ago, but everybody was like, "It's settled. We know what's going to
Yeah.
happen."
But why? What? I mean, again, I know it's urban. I know there's a university, but why is that dot of blue exist there like that?
Yeah, I don't know. And look, it's expensive. I mean, if
Yeah,
if you're if Iowa were in play, then Nebraska too would be in play. But because you'd have to go ahead and buy Omaha anyway to get
yeah,
to the
yeah,
western part of Iowa. But if Iowa's not in play and it's not in play, then it becomes incredibly expensive to spend money just in Omaha for the one electoral vote there.
right. And you agree Maine too is also just a set red.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the 7 states, and just as an exercise, and Audra will toggle them as you do it. Tell me what you think her clearest path is right now. Is it the three Great Lakes states?
Yeah. The three Great Lakes states, take her to two
Okay.
seven. Yeah.
So let's give her Wisconsin and Michigan, but give Trump Pennsylvania for the sake of an exercise.
Okay.
All right. So if that happens, if she wins Wisconsin and Michigan, but she loses Pennsylvania, what's her best path or most likely path?
Well,
Make,
Georgia and
make
Nevada. Yeah.
Pennsylvania
Georgia.
red, please.
Yeah. Two.
Georgia, Nevada. So
Yeah.
so if she loses Pennsylvania, she needs either Georgia and North Carolina, and then one of the other three,
Right.
right? And is that her second most likely path? Is some combination? She can do that same replacement if she wins Pennsylvania but loses, say, Michigan or Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, well, she wins the Great Lakes state. She's at 270 as the map shows.
Yeah. But I'm
She
saying if she loses any one of the three Great Lakes states,
Yep.
she
She has
replaces them the same way.
right, correct.
If she loses two of the Great Lakes states, is there a path?
I don't think so.
Okay. What is his best path now?
Uh
Again, most likely.
yeah. Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Or any of the
Any of
others.
them. Yeah, one of the Great Lakes states plus the Sun Belt.
Right. And if he loses both North Carolina and Georgia, does he have a path?
No,
What if he wins all three Great Lakes states, or you just don't think that'd happen?
I don't think that's going to happen. Uh, that's how he won in 2016 was sweep the Great Lakes states.
Yeah.
But but particularly if he loses the 45 electoral votes of North Carolina and Georgia.
In Georgia. Um,
35, excuse me.
yeah. Um, I've been of the belief
I'm
that
sorry, 30,
despite
30, 32. I was
yeah,
adding in
I,
Pennsylvania.
I, I've been of the belief, despite that it could be close and that the individual states could be close, but it'd still be an electoral college blowout, that I think someone's going to win 6 or 7 of them.
Well, you and Carville are in the same place. I was with James at an event out in Silicon Valley in front of a bunch of tech investors, and James about a month ago said there was an instinct that they were all going to move in one direction, and it may
Yeah.
be right. I mean, the closing argument of each person is going to be heard to the same relative level in each one of these states, and so if somebody has a more compelling argument, his argument is she's dangerously liberal and I will fix the border. I will stop inflation and we will drill, baby, drill. So energy prices drop and I will get the economy roaring just like it was before COVID.
Yeah.
If that's a more compelling one, then conceivably he could move all of these his direction because look, again, he started this thing out as the change candidate. And the question is he seen still as a change candidate?
Yeah. We have some states like Florida that are great at counting fast. They
Yes.
just are. None of these seven are great at counting fast. And you
Uh,
get asked,
yeah, Georgia and North Carolina do a pretty good job.
they do better,
Yeah.
but they're still not, they're not in the class of Florida for whatever reason.
No, no.
You get asked all the time, as I do, when will we know? And obviously the answer is depends on how close it is.
Mhm.
Based on the current legal challenges and the pending legal challenges on casting and counting, both pre-election and post, which ones does your knowledge and spidey sense tell you are potentially the biggest problems for overtime?
Wisconsin and Pennsylvania simply because they don't allow the mail-in ballots to be worked until election day.
Yeah.
But look, here's the other thing: is my gut tells me that people know that this is a problem and they're working to make certain that there are extra resources thrown at the problem. So we are likely to see a faster count than we might anticipate in all of these states because they look, we're not the only people who say it's a problem that it took
Yeah.
you so long to get this done.
Yeah. So, for instance, we were talking on two-way to some election administrators in Wisconsin last week, I think, and I think they're going to start counting morning up, but I think they've got a plan to do it faster than usual
Yeah.
and have a separate team handle that. All right. Anything else you want to say about any of that? I know you said a lot, and I'm
Yeah,
grateful to you.
look. I just want to be clear. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I've never seen an election in which there have been so few states, and yet the polls showing it so close. And anybody who thinks that they know how it's going to turn out is, I think, good for them if they think they know. I think it is very, very close and very difficult to forecast. The relative strength of the ground game is something that we're not able to measure. And the real life effect of the levels of enthusiasm of each party's prospective supporters is really hard to measure. How it's going to affect the turnout when you have, less than 1% in most of these states being the gap between the two candidates.
All right, Karl, thank you. Christine Davis, I would say she's a Republican from Maryland who would probably prefer George W. Bush to Donald Trump. I would say that safe
This
to
is very
say.
true, Mark. You can
Yeah.
speak for me on that.
Yeah. All right.
Karl,
Christine,
thank you.
floor is yours. Go
I
ahead.
am going to vote for Larry Hogan. And I have to admit that I'm a less enthusiastic Harris supporter than I was, a few months ago, but maybe that's for another show. Karl, thank you for this masterclass, and I loved your virtual whiteboard. I have to ask, I'm sure folks are going to want to get into, the nitty gritty of this particular election. Good. I'm glad you've still got the physical one too. I know you're not running campaigns anymore, but what are you the most excited about in terms of data sources or technology or other tactics that campaigns in this day and age, have available to them? Or is kind of a part suspicion I have that, almost having this overwhelming access to data and technology and other tools, it's actually making this game harder maybe than it was in 2000?
Well, the more data you have, the easier it is for you to identify who your prospective targets ought to be, namely low propensity and swing voters. And ironically enough, the presence of all this data has caused people to think they could get away with winning elections by focusing on their bases only. And yet data has given us the tools to identify not only who the low propensity voters are and who the swing voters are, but what is it that matters to them? So it allows you to run a more effective campaign if you stay focused on those groups and focus your resources on talking to them about the things they actually care about when they care about it. One of the things I don't claim to be knowledgeable about it, but I'm very intrigued by it is the influence of social media influencers. There's a lot of attention paid to it this time around. I don't know how effective or not effective it is. And it really has a big question, which is increasingly people are thinking about, well, we're going to pay the influencers to contact voters on our behalf. Does that require a disclaimer? If you pay a printer to send out a mail piece, it has to have a disclaimer. If you pay a television station or radio station to play your ad, it has to have a disclaimer. What if we now start saying, okay, well, we've got an influencer who's got, fill in the blank, 1 million people who follow her on TikTok, and we're going to now pay her a modest fee. How's that all going to be handled? Because I think we do want to have political communications identified as political communications, so we can take that into consideration. We ascribe to a political opinion from a campaign less credibility. We're naturally a little bit more suspicious than if it is from a completely neutral source.
And I just can't help but ask, I mean, your mantra, I think I remember used to be, 7 touches at least for every, at least high propensity voter, but probably the low ones too. Now that we can pinpoint more specifically, does that kind of, saturation go down, or is it just a bigger pool, from which to saturate?
It's a bigger and better pool. I mean, it's, I shouldn't say bigger, is a better pool. Because sometimes I'm involved in a voter registration effort for the last 3 cycles in Texas. And what we're finding is that data allows us to really target more and more so we can say, okay, this group of people, we can hit these people, 9 or 10 times to get them to register, because it'll be fruitful even in the 9th or 10th time. This other group over here, because of these characteristics, is going to wear out if we tap them 2 or 3 times. We're going to find that it's no longer cost effective to continue to encourage them to register.
Christine, thank you. Always enjoy having you on. Jay, please unmute and ask away, please.
Thank you both for sharing your insight. Karl, love listening to you, and David Axelrod. I wanted to ask, I wanted to get your insight on this. As you can see, I'm obviously one of these younger Black voting men. I'm voting for Harris. But one thing I see among my own demographic, right, is that a lot of the divide between young Black African Americans voting is really a educational and worker and socioeconomic divide, right? You see many Black men who are working with their hands, who don't have to rely upon things like a college degree or perhaps any type of licenses or certifications to work, right? They are leaning more towards Trump than they were previously. Those who work in, white collar work, whatever it may be, college educated, they're leaning towards Harris. But I think one thing that you might have some insight on is, do you see this reliance on that working class Black male voter being significant for Trump? Because do they show out to vote? Are they going to vote? Is this just a phenomenon that you're seeing? Is it just the loud noises?
Yeah. Well, at minimum, they're worth 2 votes, because they're taking a vote. If they voted before, they're taking a vote away from the Democrats and giving it to Trump. So they're worth, they're 2x. They may be worth just 1x. They didn't participate, so added to Trump, it's 1x. But yeah, no, they're incredibly valuable as a political asset. But what's interesting to me is how durable that's going to be. I think part of it is a reaction to the unique circumstances that we've been through since 2020. And I think also part of it is, and that may or may not be durable, but it also is a growing sense among part of the American electorate that, look, we may not be college educated, but we're worthy of respect and we have aspirations. And he gets that, she doesn't, or she gets it, he doesn't. But it's to me one of the more interesting things. I'm seeing it in the Hispanic community in Texas. Zavala County last voted for a Republican president in 1920. This is a county down on the Rio Grande River in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Went for Hillary by like 2-1, gave Donald Trump like a 15-point margin in 2020. Why? Because a lot of people in that part of the world are working, and first of all, they're affected by the border, and they know that there's a difference between, what the Democrats did and what the Republicans did. But also, you got a young Hispanic family, and he's driving a truck. He's got a high school education and a CDL license, and he's driving a truck in the Eagle Ford Shale and making $110,000 a year. and she's working at the local cafe and getting pretty good tips from the oil field crowd coming in at lunch. And they say, there's one party that's coming for my job and another party that's going to protect my job. And I think we're going to see this, for example, in southeast New Mexico, where I think Trump is going to do better because, again, heavily Hispanic population, really dependent upon energy. And a lot of people out there now still employed, but they're saying, you know what, they're not allowing as much leasing on federal lands in southeast New Mexico. And so they're still drilling on the other side of the Permian, on the other side of the state border, where there are no federal lands in Texas. But I got to drive 60 miles to go to work and spend an hour on a road driving from, Roswell to, Andrews in Texas in order to work the rig. And it's because one party has sort of tightened up the cinch on leasing federal lands being anti-oil and gas, and another party wants to drill, baby, drill. So we'll same thing I think is happening inside the Black community with young men saying, I deserve better and I want somebody who's going to be paying attention to me.
Jay, thank you. Appreciate you joining. Karl, there's 4 states that the Trump campaign thinks Trump could win if it's a landslide. Is it sensible to spend time going to any of them, or they'd live to regret it because you should spend every minute in the battleground states?
Let's spend every moment in the battlegrounds.
So when he goes to Albuquerque, you're going to say it was a bad idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Martin, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, if you would, and what's on your mind.
Hey, how's it going? I'm sitting here in New York City, but I'm registered to vote in Los Angeles. So even if I voted in New York, probably wouldn't change the outcome whatsoever. I'm curious about the independent, unaffiliated votes that's already been that have already been booked in these swing states. Is there any indication which way those are going to break, other than polling? Is there some tell that we could read into it?
Well, I'm sure each one of the campaigns has got a read on it, because they've got models that allow them to take the list of voters who have voted, if they're declined to state, independent, nonpartisan, and run them through that model and figure out what they, what do they look like, and what are the, what's the high likelihood that they're Trump or Harris voters accordingly. And I know that's being done. I just don't know.
And Karl, just to interrupt you on that, they're literally the only 2 entities who have that data, right?
Well, I assume that super PACs have that data as well. And like, for example, in Texas, we've got 2 data sources, 2 analysts who just sort of, as we get down here to the end, take a look at that data each day, because they're helping their clients are consultants and campaigns who are trying to focus their get out the vote effort. So, for example, let me pull up one here.
You in a browser or an app right now?
I'm on my phone.
I know, but are you looking at an app or
No, I'm pulling up an email.
Email? Okay.
See, James.
Martin, who are you voting for?
I already voted for Trump. So it would be 3-time voter for Trump.
Where do you live in Los Angeles?
I live in Brentwood, where OJ didn't kill his wife.
Yeah. You could probably take a big long walk around your neighborhood and not find that many other Trump voters.
No, I mean, other than my parents, I mean, I'd say it's probably 2-1, easy. Definitely on the west side. But interestingly enough, my male friends, I'm 34 years old. I'd say my male friends, it's probably 75% Trump.
In LA or all over?
In LA.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I think one of the secrets of this campaign, I'm probably going to be wrong on this, but I think he's going to run better in California and New York, appreciably better than he ran before.
Yeah.
And
big enough that he could. Big enough that he could win the popular vote, Karl, or you rule that out?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I was talking with Kevin McCarthy the other day, was looking at polling data, and he is really surprised by the percentage that Trump is getting in some of these California congressional districts. Like, look, back to the question about modeling. This is on Texas early vote in person. They matched 98.8% of the voters to the voter file. And then they found that we don't have partisan registration in Texas. So yesterday, through Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday, the first 2 days of early vote, 48.4% were Republican, 32.65 Democrat, and 18.95 independent. That's by primary voter history. But then they looked at modeling them, and they modeled them as 49% Republican, 31% Democrat. So that they took the 18.95% and figured out who they were, and then modeled them. And the Republicans picked up basically 1%, of the Democrats dropped 1%. And so anyway, they're looking at them both ways: primary voter history, and then actually the model.
Martin, why do you think young men are attracted to Trump? Is it issues? Is it style? Is it they don't like the Democrats, or some combination? What would you attribute it to?
No, I think it's everything the media has been really touching on it, at least in some of the programs. I think that men in their 20s and 30s feel like the Democratic Party is shying away from masculinity. I think that's a big piece of it. And then I think it's pocketbook issues. I do think the culture wars, it's been pretty effective with the younger male demographic this cycle. And it's been propagated by a lot of the podcasts that are becoming more popular, and sort of the social media and stuff like that. It's probably played up a little bit too much, but there's this general backlash, I think, amongst young men in my orbit that that masculinity is toxic and stuff like that. And I think that's playing in, but then it's just pocketbook issues. I think at least my friend group tends to be a little bit more fiscally conservative, and then socially pretty liberal.
When you say cultural, what do you mean? What do they react to?
Well, I just think, there's this sense that, I'd say that there's a sense that, the Republican Party is a party of macho man, whereas Democrats, there's this whole thing with the whole white guys for Kamala thing, right? And there's all these memes going around about how those guys are not the masculine guys. And I think that they're really playing that up, but I think that general sense is that the Democrats think that the traditional macho man is it's a bad thing, and I think guys like me just sort of say, hey, we just want to be normal guys, and we don't think there's a problem with we don't want to be looked at as a problem for just being normal guys, guys with ugly beards, whatever. And it feels like the Republican Party is really appealing more to that sort of traditional vision of a man. And I'm not saying that means guys should go out and do locker room stuff and be, bad guys. But I just think that the Republican Party is doing a better job in branding itself as sort of the party of, normal men from time immemorial. That's sort of my take.
Martin, do you wear your MAGA hat when you go to the deli in Brentwood?
Oh my God! If I were to, let me tell you something.
Not suicidal.
Your number one mistake, if you're trying to not remain single on the west side of Los Angeles, your number one mistake would be to start talking about Trump at any bar on the west side of LA. So
Martin,
no,
thank you
do not want to.
Thank you for joining, Martin, and for the colloquy and for the West Side dating advice. Suzanne, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are, if you want, who you're supporting, and what a question for Karl.
Okay, first of all, I'm in Western North Carolina, and I moved here about a year and a half ago, and I'm registered as an independent. I voted for Reagan when I was in college, so that gives you an idea of how old I am, and I voted for all the Bushes. I love Jeb Bush. But I'm now independent because I'm a never Trumper, but I consider myself a Liz Cheney Republican. And so my first question was going to be about North Carolina independence, but I think Karl has answered that question from Martin. But my second question is for Karl is, I really consider myself a Liz Cheney Republican. So where do Liz Cheney Republicans go after this election? I mean, I voted on the first day of voting. I did not vote for Donald Trump, but socially, I consider myself a Republican. So, I mean, on social issues.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
where does somebody like me go after this election?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, to some extent, it depends on the outcome of the election. If Trump loses, then there will be a gigantic battle for the future of the Republican Party. If Trump wins, there's still going to be a struggle because Trump is sui generis. He's totally unique. He's got an unbelievable ability, almost feral, to figure out where things are going and how to bend it to his direction. But the people who want to, sort of who are his acolytes, whether it's Josh Hawley or J.D. Vance, I don't see them as having his skills.
Mhm.
And what is MAGA populism? Was it is it favor of 20% tariffs or 100% tariffs? Is it the guy who was going to ban TikTok because of China, and then when he decided it was capable of being used for communication and effectively in his campaign, said I'm in favor of it? I mean, this is not a guy who, like William F. Buckley, who, has studied the great thoughts of conservative thinkers. I mean, to Trump, von Mises was a guy who ran it at Haberdashery in the East Side, and Hayek had a deli in Queens, and Adam Smith used to do business with him as an insurance agent. So I mean, he's not a guy who has read the great thinkers, and similarly, his people are not, by and large, operating within a well-defined ideological framework. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Don Jr. is not going to be a worthy successor to his dad, and the question
No.
is somebody like J.D. Vance or Josh Hawley going to be able, or Marco Rubio, to say, I'm going to take Trumpism and give it a framework that makes it more durable beyond the man himself.
I really worry about NATO and Ukraine if Trump is, because the what J.D. Vance outlined as a possible peace proposal is exactly what Putin would like. So I really consider myself aligned with Liz Cheney, and I just don't know where a Republican like me goes after this.
Yeah.
So, and I do think Trump is going to win.
Suzanne, thank you.
Where in North
Appreciate it.
Carolina are you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Unmute again.
Allegheny. Oops. I'm in Allegheny County. I think it's 87% Republican.
Yeah. You're far west.
I am. And I love.
Yeah.
I'm
Did
sorry.
you have family? Did you have family there? What drew you to Allegheny?
I moved here from Colorado, actually, and it was simply because Colorado housing prices had gotten too expensive for me.
Yeah.
And rural North Carolina was a lot more affordable. And actually, I'm glad I'm here. I love it much more than Colorado.
Excellent.
I love the area.
Where in Colorado?
I lived in Evergreen, which is in the foothills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyways, Carl,
Suzanne,
thank you.
I was born in Denver.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, St. Joe's Hospital, same place John Kerry was born. And every time I run into John Kerry, I remind him that we were born together at the same hospital, and it pisses him off.
I'm originally from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and so I had Jeb Bush as a governor, and I just love Jeb Bush, as I already said. But anyways, thank you so much, and thank you, Mark, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Albert, welcome in. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
I'm from Henderson, Nevada, so in Clark County.
There we go.
We moved here 2 years ago from San Jose, California. Glad we moved here. So I'm voting for Trump. I'm hesitant to voting for Trump. Primarily, I'm not 100% for Trump because of what happened during COVID, how he handled COVID, and how I had to deal with it in California. But that was more of a local and state issue. But in any case, my question to both of you is, what do you think these 2 October surprises are going to have on the election? These 2 stories that just came out recently on Trump.
Which 2 stories?
The John Kelly, the Atlantic,
the Atlantic, and then the Atlantic, and I just saw from the Guardian that came out last night. I think it might have been a story you were referring to, Mark. Yeah, I don't know if it is.
That's actually not, it's not the story I was referring to.
Okay.
The Guardian story's gotten almost no pickup. I'm a little surprised by that. I don't know if major news organizations are looking into it to confirm it. And I think the John Kelly story will net maybe help Trump. I can't imagine the voters it's going to convert, and I think it's seen by a lot of voters as, not a coincidence that the Atlantic ran the exact type of story that the Harris campaign decided they want to switch their closing message to. I'm not minimizing how seriously some people take this portrayal of Donald Trump and how much it turns them against him, but the energy I feel is roughly equal from the story. Karl.
I think it's a bad note to end on. I don't see that it wins her one more vote than she would otherwise have, and it does energize his people. Look, she's been a candidate on the presidential stage for 92 days. So we want to know more about her. And I think it would be more effective for her to spend the next 13 days saying, here's the vision that I have for the future of our country, and here's what I'm going to do to make your life more prosperous, our country more safe, and the world more at peace. And that will win her votes. I'm not certain saying he's a fascist is going to win her one more vote that she wouldn't otherwise have. Everybody who would be motivated by that was already motivated.
Okay, thank you.
Albert, who do you think is going to win your state and why?
You know what? That's a great question. So my wife and I live in Henderson. You're familiar, sounds Karl, with this Nevada, and each city in Nevada or each city in at least the Las Vegas area has a local casino. So wife and I go to our local casino. We have dinners at our local casino, and the people we talk to are all Trump supporters. So I know that's anecdotal, but it just seems, and we see people in our neighborhood have Trump signs, and people are just seem to be excited about Trump here. So I think Trump is actually going to win Nevada. It's just anecdotal, but people seem to be enthused about voting for Trump here.
Okay. Albert, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up, Gabriel, come on in. Unmute yourself, please. Tell us where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please. One more time, unmute. There you go.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. My name is Gabriel. I'm in El Paso, Texas, and I'm supporting Kamala Harris.
Great. What's on your mind? What question do you have for Mr. Rove?
Well,
my fellow Texans.
Yes, you are. I guess my big question is almost a personal question about data collection. For 24 years, we've had this small donor collection that seems like the poll of polls. Millions of people have to pay to get surveyed about their enthusiasm for a candidate. In 2016, anybody paying attention to that would have known that Trump was going to win the Electoral College. In 2008, everybody would have known. 2004, there would be no John Kerry blue mirage. Why am I seeing no data collection with the polls having such difficulty collecting data, focusing on voter enthusiasm and weighing that accordingly in a small donor gap?
Well, the small donor gap is to some degree mechanical. The Democrats started the Act Blue in 2004, and the Republicans didn't start Win Red until many years later, I think 12 years later. So they got a head start. They also had two boosters. The first one was Howard Dean, who at the end of the 2004 campaign gave his donor list to Act Blue in return for future, use of the file if he ran again. And as a result, they had the advantage of this, new group of lucrative donors. They got another boost again when after 2016, Bernie Sanders did the same thing. And in fact, he did it again after 2020. Here's my list. If I run again, I get to use a similar number of names. And as a result, they have, they had a big head start. They also have a different models. Theirs is a not-for-profit model. And I think I don't know this for fact certain, but my gut tells me that they are putting more money into research and expansion and development and honing the list than is Win Red. And Win Red is taking its profits and putting them in the pockets of the people who started Win Red, which I'm a capitalist, but there's sometimes, something like this ought to be, I think the Democrats have got a better ecosystem as a result of the nonprofit model in which the money gets reinvested in the model. But the Republicans better get their act together on this because just like we dominated on the center right, we dominated direct mail. The Democrats are dominating online fundraising.
I guess if I can make just one follow-up comment, why wasn't there so much concern in the 2016 polls when Trump was dominating the small donor base?
Well, the fundraising is different than a poll. I mean, he was he was dominating the online fundraising because, Hillary Clinton was raising money, lots of money in the traditional ways, and and she also had the advantage of Win Blue, excuse me, Act Blue, and I think she was pretty competitive on the small dollar stuff. That's where he relied on.
3-1.
Yeah.
Trump raised, sure, I believe 130 million to 40 million or something like that.
You know the numbers, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
that
sorry.
sounds
I
right.
guess
It sounds about right to me.
I was right that no one's paying attention to this at least. But at every election, I see the same thing: the small donor ratio and the electoral college ratio, same thing for 24 years, and no one seems to be looking at it. It was just I think I'm seeing that the mechanics of it perhaps lose the data, but we should definitely start looking at external data if we can't get polls. Nobody's responding to polls.
Yep. Great. Gabriel, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Richard, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, please.
Let me unmute.
Yep. Go ahead. Try one more time. Richard, one more time.
Republic of California, a center-right conservative, voted for Trump twice and will vote for him again. I want to direct this to Karl. If I heard that right, you're giving the edge to Kamala Harris in Michigan, and I'm looking at the numbers, and in the Senate race there, according to Atlas, which is pretty accurate, it's a dead heat. Trafalgar has it 46-45 for Slotkin. With the trends going in Trump's favor, particularly over the last 2 weeks, is that really where you think that race is going in Michigan, that it's going to go to Harris?
Well, first of all, I'm saying she's leading there in Michigan. I don't know who's going to win any of these states because to me, at the end of the day, there are going to be two things that are going to happen between now and when the polls close. One is going to be the closing message of the candidates, and how good or how not good that is among the people who are up for grabs is yet to be determined. We started to see the outlines of their closing messages. As I just said, I don't think it's smart for her to be saying, it was a wasted day yesterday for her to say, I agree with John Kelly. She should have had something that would dominate that as opposed to letting that dominate. The second thing is there's going to be a surprise. This is not over. There's going to be something that's going to happen, and how people handle that moment is going to have an effect on the outcome of the election. And then running underneath this is we have no way until it's actually all done to verify the capacity and the success that each side's grassroots get out the vote effort is going to have. And so, one thing is out there that's unmeasurable, and two things that are going to have an impact that have yet to play out.
Richard, thank you. Appreciate it. Karl, unfortunately, I know you're not going to come back and spend 2 hours with us every day. So without giving away your secrets, what should people read every day to track the Electoral College in the 7 states?
Well, make up your own little blue sheet and, track it. Just, what I do is I have the number, and then I show whether that number is what the upward movement is or downward movement from the previous day, so I can sort of get a sense of it. But look, I read Marx, I read Politico. I've got I have the Dispatch. I consume as much information as I can in order to keep on top of it. You may not want to do that much, but I have to sort of do it because I got to write a column every week, and I need the inspiration that following it closely gives me. And I also have to appear on Fox 5.8 times a week. Not that anybody's so I need to keep up with that as well. But
and except for the aggregations, the 3 aggregation sites, are there sites you look at for data regarding early vote?
Yeah, the NBC News has a really good site. If you're really into the early vote thing, go to the NBC News. Now you'll need to start keeping your own form of a sheet to track it from day to day, but they have a really good little barcode, little bar of color that shows each day and shows the cumulative by Republican, Democrat, and undecided. But remember, we don't have a good baseline to operate from. We can say, look, here's the vote on election night is coming in from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Here's how well he did last year, or 4 years ago. Here's how he did well in this precinct or this county that's in. We don't have numbers that are reliable as a baseline because 2020 was so weird. And a lot of people who voted early last time around by mail may vote early in person, or they may wait for election day, or they may repeat what they did. We just don't know. We're at a great reset here. We're at this election going forward. I'm gonna try and have enough numbers on election night that I can compare to 2022 to see if if 2022 is a better starting point than 2020.
Last question: how late do you think you'll stay up on election night?
Last time around, they released me at 4:30 a.m.
And when were you back on camera?
I was back on camera like 11 o'clock, I think. This time around, I've got to go get on an airplane to fly to Phoenix, Arizona to speak at the Centerview Investors Conference that day. So I'll be sleeping on an airplane from New York to Phoenix.
Blissful. Karl, we're also grateful to you for making time, and we're going to make sure as many people see this as possible, because at a minimum, it'll set their mind at ease.
That it set their minds at ease that we don't know what the hell is going to happen.
Exactly. That's what I mean. They can relax knowing that if you don't know the answer, no one does. So great, very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you at 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's all about Pennsylvania. We'll have our Pennsylvania poll. Dave McCormick, a Senate candidate, a bunch of other folks from Pennsylvania. So take a break from me. Enjoy your afternoon. I'll see you at 6 o'clock Eastern.